Let's go! And we are back for round 2 of this mold. Hopefully this side goes much smoother now that I know the recipe that we figured out from the other side. Now there's a couple things I need to do before we go start throwing down some fiberglass. One, I need to clean everything up, just make sure it's nice and clean. If you remember, I did put down 6 full coats of part-all paste on both sides. That was just to make sure that it was all nice and sealed and that everything would hopefully release. I do need to get part-all paste on the flanges, so that does need to get done. But before we can even do that, I need to come back and I need to get the flange put on the front, which was the same as the other side. I need to fill all the gaps that are currently present with that clay and make sure that gets all cleaned up down there as well. And then I also plan on just putting a couple more coats of part-all paste onto the plug just for added insurance. I did lay it over a little bit further this time. That was trying to hopefully make it go a little bit smoother and be a little easier to lay in that glass. But overall, I think we're close. So I'll get this all cleaned up and then we'll come back and spray down some gel coat. All right, I think I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be for the second coat of gel coat. We're going to do 3 layers again, the same way we did the first time. This time around I got black, so we're going to see gray and then a white and then a gray. And just to give you guys a little bit of information, bring you up to speed, I threw some duct tape around the edges just to make sure that really any of the resin or gel coat won't adhere to the edges of my existing flanges. I also thought it might actually give me a little bit of an air gap between the 2 flanges when they're fully cinched together, so that I can get a wedge or something in there to help me with demolding. So I don't know, I've never seen it before, but I figured it might work. We got everything down, another 3 coats of wax, or 4 coats of wax actually. So pray to whatever gel coat god you believe in and send some luck my way. Here we go. All right, so the first coat went down actually pretty well. Pretty happy with how that turned out. It had really good coverage. I mean, pretty status quo. I waited about, I would say like 45 minutes or so and laid down the second coat, and got some problems here, not big enough to stop, but basically I got a little bit of alligatoring there and then another little bit over here. That's just on the flange. That's basically extra space for the layup. So if I have to fill that with some resin or something and flatten it out just so it doesn't leak through the sticky tape or whatever, that's not a big deal. It's if it was going to happen anywhere, that's where I wanted it to happen. All the other flanges are good. We got good clean coverage. We're going to wait for this to tack up again, and then I'll throw down one more gray coat just to seal everything off, and then back to throwing down some fiberglass. All right, that's it. The third and final gel coat layer is down, and I don't know, I think it went pretty well. To only have 2 small spots where it alligatored in a non-critical spot, I mean, I cannot complain based on all the other failures that I've had. So we'll let this tack up for a little while. I want to get at least the fillets in and the first layer of mat down tonight while this is still tacky. We'll let that set, and then we'll probably start bulking up tomorrow. Well, I really wish I was on the other side of this camera just to see the progress and not be the one actually doing the work. But we are here and it is done. There are four full layers of 1.5 ounce fiberglass mat down. We basically used about 4 gallons, same as the last side, to get it all down. There's an additional layer of 3/4 ounce mat all around the edges. Once again, that's just to make sure that it did lay flat against the gel coat and there were no voids, so that would hopefully make the mold stronger in the future. Now, I did go out and buy some pipe insulation tubing, whatever this stuff is called. This should be compatible with polyester resin. I was going to check before I use it. And basically I was going to cut these in quarters or halves, lay them across the mold, and then glass over it. I'm starting to have, I guess, second guesses on whether or not I should do that. But instead of boring you with all that now, I figured I'll have a longer discussion because there was a whole bunch of questions about what I'm doing and if it's right or wrong. So I'm going to save that for the end of the video. Stick around and yeah, we'll have a fun conversation and hopefully get some feedback in the comments. Today is finally the day that I get to try and pull these molds off of this plug. God bless, please help them come off. But anyways, before I get ahead of myself, it's really important that you have a way to bolt these mold halves together once they're apart, and it's really important that they're aligned. Now, we did go put those pyramids on here, and it should align pretty well, but it's always a good idea to drill holes where those bolts are going to go through before you start pulling anything off of your plug. That'll just, once again, assure everything is aligned in the future. Come on, baby. Come on. You can do it. There we go. Let's go. Come on. Oh, so good. Oh, keep coming. Let's go! Oh my God! Oh, it's so good! Let's go! Oh, I'm sure you want to see it, don't you? Oh! Oh, there she is. All that clay will come out. There's that alligator that's not an issue. Here's the other one. Oh, look at this. Look at these corners. Oh, so good. Oh, and it's just perfect. There are no issues. Look down in here. Oh, it's a perfect mold. That I filled the spot. I didn't tell you guys about that, but I filled the spot. It's going to be fine. Oh, this parting line is great. And then look up here. Look at how nice that is. Oh, just beautiful. Another nice, really nice parting line. Oh, it's gonna be so good. Oh my God. So much hard work pays off. Well, piss. There it goes. There it goes. There she comes. There it is. Let's go. And the plug is still good. Jeez. I freaking love it. Love to see it. So good. All right, let's get these things outside. I don't know if it's gonna fit, to be honest. There's no way it's gonna fit. That is a big mold. Oh. Oh. All right, I rough trimmed the molds basically to a good enough shape. I also cleaned them up and tried to pressure wash all of the clay out, which didn't end up working as good as I hoped. So I still have some cleanup to do by hand, but long story short, it's going to be just fine. I do want to share some lessons learned though, that I basically figured out by doing this. If you remember, the pink side was done first. I used the clay and then I covered the clay with shellac. I don't think I would do that again, to be honest. It didn't really help with release from the plug, or excuse me, from the mold, and it ended up leaving runs and textures on the parting lines and in places that, to be frank, I wish it would have just been left alone. And that goes back to the gray side. The gray side, I did not use any of that shellac, and the parting lines are much better. And I mean, I'm gonna have to clean out the clay, but I got to do that anyways. And that same thing can be seen here on the plug. This side of the plug, I used the shellac. This side of the plug, I did not. And it's really clear to see now that the molds are off, but it's definitely a much better surface left over here on the side that I didn't use it versus the side that I did. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the strategy I used for duct tape and basically where I used it. So the duct tape basically covered areas on the plug that I guess hindsight I was too lazy to actually make really pretty, but I still needed an extra length of space for my flange so that it'll help with the layup. So on here you can see that basically the plug surface that was clean is everywhere the carbon will get laid up onto, but then the duct tape, I don't care what it looks like because it's not going to affect the look of the part, but it just was basically there to extend my plug without me having to actually put in extra effort in high build primer, sanding, and making it look nice. This is another great example of that duct tape being used. This was on the very bottom of the helicopter, which was a real pain to get to clean up. And so I basically just stuck to the areas that I knew I needed the part to be. So you can see here my carbon part will come over and sit on this nice pretty mold face. I need about a 1/2 inch flange to come down this face, and so you see that joggle in the duct tape. So the carbon will stay on the pretty surface, and then I'll end up just using the bag out to this surface, and so this really doesn't matter. This right here is actually a pretty good example of how difficult it is to get the mat into tight radii, and how this actually shows some bridging where we use that resin and micro balloons to fill into the corner. If I didn't go in before and add that bead of resin and micro balloons, it's likely that all these sharp corners would probably have cracked and been pretty poor quality. And one more thing, my bright idea to put duct tape on the edge of one side of the mold to prevent the resin from sticking into it, and then also giving me a spot to put my wedge in there and pry them apart, clearly there's a reason why no one does this, and that's because you can put a chamfer into your mold as you're cleaning it up so that you can get a wedge in there for all the other times. Now, unfortunately, we aren't quite done with this mold. It's currently a 2-part mold, and I mentioned in a previous video it needs to be a 3-part mold, and that's where this comes into play. So up here there is a void, and if you remember from the last time, I didn't want to have to deal with the super complex shape of that, I don't know what we're calling, mast or pillar from the actual helicopter. And so I left these flanges in here so that we could close off the bottom and then make a 3rd mold to sit into this location and give me a nice smooth contour that I can lay up my carbon easily into. That will eventually be trimmed around that mast, and then we'll mount it to the helicopter, but none of that geometry is needed. So we need to make one more mold. The idea is, and we'll see if I can pull it off, is I'm going to use this corrugated plastic again. I'll size it and cut it to fit, and then I'll probably just end up hot gluing it into this location, trying to keep those gaps as small as possible. And if all goes well, we'll gel coat it, fill it in with some fiberglass, and it should sit in there just fine and leave, and it's not that big of a deal, it should leave pretty much a small seam line where it should likely have to be cut later. And I'm not worried about the texture of this corrugated plastic showing through to the carbon part, because once again it's going to get cut off. I think this used to be called MacGyvering, and now it's called redneck engineering, but I needed a way to evenly distribute the load on this complex curve while the hot glue sets up. And I had this foam lying around and a 2x4 and an old broomstick, and figured why not give this a rip. So I think it's going to be okay. I mean, the seam line is small enough. Once again, this isn't critical. This just needs to work. So I think that's what we're going to go with. It's still going to be a challenge to get the hot glue in there and then get it all set before the hot glue starts to solidify and cause issues, but this is what we're going with. Just tape out. Well, I got a little ambitious or lazy or anxious, pick your poison, and basically did 4 layers all in one layup. That also got a little warm, and I'm not sure if you can tell, but my little, I guess, mold came released. I think it might have actually, I can't imagine it melted the hot glue, but anyways, it released before it was fully cured. So I'm super curious now to see if this actually worked. So we're going to pull this off and find out. Meh, it's gonna work. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's as good as I'm gonna be able to get it, to be fair. Okayest for sure. Let go. Please. Whoop. There it is. She's out. Oh no. Oh, she didn't release. Oh no. Well, not ideal. I mean, I'm going to be able to salvage it and it's going to work, but basically this is what happens when you don't use enough release. I put 3 coats of Partall paste down, but must have done something wrong, because you can see here, well, there's 2 things to learn here. One, that white gel coat came off of that side, meaning it stuck, and then you see the void there. That's also transferred to the other part of the mold, but more importantly, that happened because it's on an outer corner and there was an air bubble, and the first layer didn't get all the way down to the gel coat. So that's what happens when you don't get the first layer right. I mean, I don't know. It's, you can tell there, you can see light through it now, but it was a harder spot to get to, and I just must not have done it well enough. So so that one broke out. It also pulled on this side, you can see at the top, all that white, that all transferred. Same there, that transferred from there. At the end of the day, it's not that bad. This is the surface that I needed. You can see some alligatoring, but once again, this is not a mold surface, so like, this just needed to fill a hole basically. I don't really care what it looks like, hence why I'm also okay with all those ribs. So this is gonna serve the purpose. I'm gonna remove some of this extra material. Oh, another one. So you see that hole there in the middle of the screen? So that's another one where there was a hole between the micro balloons and resin and the gel coat. It was way down deep in a corner. Not too surprised. But yeah, now there's a hole there. I might fill that up with some resin just to, I don't know, give it a little bit more support. But I'm going to remove that off the mold, the white off the mold. I'm also going to try and get some of this off just to make sure that that's not inhibiting the two parts from seating into each other. It fits pretty nice, but not perfect, and I think it's just getting hung up on some of those spots. So basically I'm going to clean this thing up. I can cut these flanges down. There's no reason for them to be that tall. I might cut it, I don't know, just above the bolt holes. That way I have less to worry about during the bagging. But a little disappointing, but honestly, it's not that big of a deal. This is going to be, it's going to serve the purpose. It's going to work just fine, and I'll be able to salvage it. And that's going to do it for this one. I am stoked with how this turned out. I could not be more thrilled. Even with the misstep up top, I don't even care. This thing turned out so good, and the parts it's going to make are just going to be even better. The high that I get when I've poured so much effort and energy into something and then finally have it turn out is literally better than anything else in life. Well, except for my wife and kids. But that's why I do this. I wish I could share that same feeling with so many other people. It is euphoric. It is amazing. Anyways, I digress. Back to the original conversation I wanted to have with everybody. If it isn't already clear, the channel's called The Okayest Engineer. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm learning all of this on the fly. And to be fair, I know a lot more now than when I started. And I probably would have followed a couple different ways to get to this point, and I'll explain that now. The first of which is this is a fiberglass mold with polyester resin. The parts that I'm going to be pulling out of this are carbon fiber, and in fact I got a high temp resin because this is going to surround an engine. That high temp resin needs to be post cured to like 350 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. These fiberglass molds are only good, now that I'm learning, to about 180 or so before stuff starts to break down and they start to get soft and it goes to shit. And so, long story longer, I can't post cure my carbon fiber parts in the mold. So that's mistake number one. I probably would have done something significantly different if I was doing this professionally or or this was a more critical part, but we are here. The second misstep that I made, or that is assumed that I made, is I only used 4 layers on this mold. The reality is I'm putting in 4 layers of carbon, 4 to 6 layers of carbon fiber into this part. I'm basically using no core. My carbon part is going to be flimsy, and it's probably going to be more flimsy than this mold. So if you were building like a monocoque with full core and it was solid, yeah, 4 or 5 layers of glass would not work probably. But the reality is my part's going to flex. I'm going to be able to pull it out of these molds, and the strength of the mold, in my opinion, will be just fine. So that's why I made kind of an educated guess and a risk analysis saying that the materials and the effort and the time weren't worth the extra strength because I didn't think that I would need them. Going back to strength, I was going to put this onto the mold to give some basically ribs and some contour to the outside of the molds, and I was going to glass that in. And this is where I need your help. That would have strengthened the mold, but it would have left air gaps on the outside of the mold. This is a 3-piece mold, and I haven't done enough research, but I've done a bit, and as far as I can tell, I haven't found anybody that can successfully do a resin infusion part on a 3-piece mold unless you bag the entire thing, which is actually what I think I'm going to be doing. That means you put a bag on the outside, bag on the inside, the whole thing is under vacuum. Now that causes an issue if I have these ribs on the outside of my mold that have air pockets in them. I'm going to be compressing them to 30 psi, which over that area is hundreds of pounds. And it could distort the mold, and it could crush those ribs, basically. And so that's why I held off on making those ribs. I'm not sure if having that big air gap in there is a good idea. It may be okay if I stiffen it up enough, but it may also introduce a twist by compressing those ribs. So I think right now the safest bet is just to leave it flat and basically live with any movement that is created. Once again, I have to post-cure this thing anyways, and the reality is I'm going to have to post-cure the carbon fiber part out of the mold, and there's a whole slew of issues that go along with that. So yeah, I think that's why I'm not going to stiffen the mold. Now back to carbon fiber and post-curing. The next step in this process for me is I'm going to have to build an oven, and the oven is going to have to fit this entire thing, and it's going to have to get up to at least 350 degrees, and I only have 110. I have a whole slew of issues and problems that I'm tackling that you will see in a future video. But regardless, once I do an initial room temperature cure on the carbon with the resin, then it's going to go into the oven without the mold. If you ramp slow enough, you actually can strengthen the carbon faster than the transition temperature. And so in theory, if you ramp, and this is the key, if you ramp slow enough, like a degree per minute or even less, you can actually put a room temperature cured carbon fiber part into an oven without any supports and any mold, and take it up to 350 degrees and actually have it not walk on you or warp. Now that's also more true with very thin parts, which is what I'm building. There's basically no core, and it's 6 or so layers thick. So I say all this to remind everyone that I'm the okayest and I'm learning. And I don't know what I'm doing. And there's things that I know now that I probably would have done different then. I hope you enjoy following along. I hope this inspires people to go build things. I hope that, and you can successfully make okay parts with the processes that I've chosen or basically fallen into from lack of knowledge. And so that's all I'm trying to do. There are better ways. I don't want you to think that I'm trying to convince everyone to do it this way and this is the best way all. It is far from that. So anyways, ending this one on a high note, love how this thing's turned out. I have a whole slew of engineering problems in the very near future that everyone's going to be able to live through and see me stumble again. But hell or high water, we're going to end up with a beautiful carbon part, one way or another. So thanks for sticking through this ramble. Go build something cool. Never stop learning. And you might end up with something like this. We'll see you on the next one.